but we're going to go ahead and get started. And our friend Kerry Owsley, am I saying your last name right? Owsley?
You are.
Cool.
Yeah, you aced that.
Thank you. Um, I reached out to Kerry, the SPL group, Secular Pro Life, and was asking if any of them would like to speak to our group because we've had Rehumanize and some other alternative pro life groups, and I wanted Secular Pro Life member to join us. So that's why I have Kerry here tonight. Kerry shared a PowerPoint with me and a little bit about her background. I said, "This sounds awesome. I want to learn more, and we need to talk." So that's why we're here. Without further ado, I'll go ahead and let Kerry start. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. I am happy to be here. So this is my presentation to you. I'm here to talk about my deconstruction journey. So to introduce myself, I'm Kerry Owsley. My pronouns are she, hers. I'm a mom to a 7-month-old boy, a business owner. I'm an agnostic, and I'm a particularly passionate pro-lifer. This group is near and dear to me because my husband's sister and brother are both queer. And in our family, we celebrate diversity and inclusion. So I am happy to see Rainbow Pro-Life, and I'm happy to be here speaking. I wasn't always this convicted about being an alt pro-lifer. I started out religious. I don't have any animosity towards religion. I'm just not religious anymore. And then a roller coaster kind of appeared in my life and led me to where I am today. And this evening, I want to take you on that journey with me. I grew up a fervent Roman Catholic. I was pro-life, as my mom regularly put it, because it was church teaching. Side note, don't get me into an argument with a pro-choice Catholic because I will very quickly start quoting the catechism to them. I was very well catechized for the first 18, 20 years of my life. So I can start talking about church teaching and doctrine and infallible doctrine. So it takes a turn if you put me in a room with a pro-choice Catholic. I do remember the moment when abortion became very real to me as a small child. And my mom sat me down and she started explaining abortion and had, the talk about reproduction with me. And I just remember being shocked overall. I was horrified that abortion would even exist. It just didn't make sense to me as a child. What I didn't know at that point was how later abortions were actually performed. My mom talked a lot more about the abortion pill at that point because she personally felt as though it was too graphic to share any other details with a child. So that's all I knew at that point. The years that reshaped me were really my 20s, starting around 21 and right up until my 30s. I'm in my 30s now. And I had a lot of things happen to me. I went through a series of failed romantic relationships. My relationship with my family kind of grew strained as certain people within my family just disagreed with my choice to move out and have a career. That's not common with all Catholics, but with my family, we were definitely kind of told growing up that the ideal was for us to stay home and be more homemakers or enter a convent. So for me to move out when I was 21 years old was very countercultural for us. So I went further with moving out. I actually went to college, to a state college. I encountered concepts like environmentalism, historical analysis, including critical race theory, and social justice concepts. So none of this I'd been exposed to as a religious kid. I also had some dark
Lie down.
experiences, um, just, being stalked, being assaulted. I won't go into detail there. I faced a potential unplanned pregnancy at one point. So a lot of things were happening to me that really altered my worldview. I moved a lot. I lost a community. I experienced job loss, and I had some economic crisis for the first time. So that really started me questioning how my faith had formed me growing up. And it led me down the path of questioning. And around the same time that I started questioning internally my beliefs, I reconnected with an old friend of mine I'd known growing up from the same church. And she introduced me to deconstruction. She was going through deconstruction. She introduced me to some group forums about deconstruction. And I said, yeah, let's go down this path to get together and see where it leads us. So I started down the deconstruction path. I went through and I combed through a lot of church dogma and a lot of doctrine. And I found for me that a lot of things did not hold up to my questions. A lot of it had simply been because the church had told me so when I was growing up, or that had told my parents so, and my parents had taught me. So when I actually held it up to my own questions and my own newfound worldview, it didn't match up to what I was seeing in my external reality. So, as an example, I looked at different topics like contraception from a non religious life, and I held up my findings to publications from the US Conference of Catholic Bishops. The Catholic Church teaches that contraceptives are contrary to the primary purpose of marriage, so they are considered harmful and immoral. And, again, no issues whatsoever with the church teaching that, but I found that as somebody who no longer considered themselves Catholic, I didn't consider contraceptives immoral. So that's one example out of many where I started veering away from the things I had been taught. Gay marriage was another one. So a lot of different things. So I did my own research. I looked up a lot of different studies. I tried to use empirical evidence and science. And that kind of led me down to the path of, okay, where does this lead me in terms of abortion? So I thought, okay, so many of these dogmas and doctrines that I've been taught as a child aren't holding up to me as an adult with my own worldview. Maybe it'll be the same about abortion too. Maybe, I'll look into this from a scientific perspective and I'll find that, it's not actually a baby, it's a clump of cells. Or maybe, getting an abortion in the first trimester is more like having a heavy period. Who knows? So I kind of started wondering about abortion as well. So, in this kind of thought process and me going down the path of questioning, the abortion topic got brought up one day in one of my online deconstruction forums. And another deconstructor brought it up and said, I'm really struggling with this. I can't get on board with abortion, even though I'm not like staunchly pro-life. And I jumped into the conversation and I said, I actually understand where you're coming from. I kind of struggle with it too. I don't want it illegal, because I had to put out my little signal that, oh, no, 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 I'm not a pro-lifer. I don't think it should be illegal. But I did say, I can really see where you're coming from on this. So I took it a step further and I said, I have some reservations because when I faced a potential crisis pregnancy, I felt pressured towards abortion and by a former partner. And I felt that abortion can and does cover up abusive situations like I was in. So I thought that was a very simple statement. What happened next kind of caught me by surprise. So the group, including my friend who was going through deconstruction with me, kind of started acting like I was a threat to be neutralized, or at least my thought was there that I had expressed. So someone immediately commented and said, you're confusing correlation with causation. And I was like, okay, this was a personal experience. I wasn't talking about statistics here. My friend actually called me up and she started asking me, oh, well, why do you think this way? And she started sending me social media reels of a pro choice doctor she said she trusted, who could debunk these pro life myths that I had, and this doctor had helped her debunk her myths. Um, Now I know a lot of even pro life doctors who use social media, but at that time, several years ago, I was thinking to myself, I don't know if I want to hear something from a doctor on social media. Maybe I want to research this myself. I don't know. If I'm just going to explicitly say, okay, you're on TikTok, I agree with you. So I had some questions about that. But in short, this was a space where I thought it was really safe to unpack and to question and be vulnerable. And I became a target for what I now know is social conformity to abortion rhetoric. So that kind of caught me by surprise since I was in, what was supposed to be a safe space for me to just deconstruct my faith. But I learned a lot from that. I would say the worst feeling though was feeling dismissed after sharing something that was deeply personal, traumatic, and it was my lived experience. So that is something that I noticed from that group. So I started to get curious. I thought about it in two ways. I could shut down and I could give up or give in, or I could look into this on my own and do some of my own research and form my own conclusion. So I chose the latter. I started doing my own research. And the first thing I tackled was the clump of cells argument. So I went back to my biology textbook, took a look at that. Then I actually looked at the abortion procedures. I searched for no fluff because I found there's a lot of marketing when we start talking about abortion procedures. The tissue is removed. This is done this way, that is done that way. There's no really clear understanding without some the fluff surrounding it of what goes into abortion. And I just wanted the no fluff version. So I went searching for that. And finally, as I was going through college, I had learned a lot about historical analysis. And I'd heard some claims about Margaret Sanger. Some of them turned out to be true, some of them were taken out of context. But I really uncovered the origins of Planned Parenthood. And I did so using primary source historical documents. And I actually ended up getting an A plus on that paper in that class, which I was really proud of because not only did I get that paper in that class, but it was also a very pro-choice environment. So for that teacher to recognize me meant a lot at that point. And I did this all using non-religious sources. So I really tried to find impartial empirical evidence that could support my theory or prove me wrong when it came to abortion and life matters. So my fact findings, probably no surprise to the people here. What I found from the biological side was the definition of life is life begins at fertilization or conception. Even very pro-choice advocates can't change that fact. What they do change is if that life is meaningful, if it's a person or a non-person, but the science is almost unanimous. Life begins at fertilization or conception. I also found that the embryo develops really rapidly, and within weeks of conception, it has functioning organs. It's visually distinguishable by the naked eye as a little person. It's not an unrecognizable mass of cells. So the argument that it's just a clump of cells didn't hold up. I also looked into abortion procedures beyond the pill, and I couldn't even make it through one video of a former abortionist talking about the procedure. And I realized that this is just not something I think anybody in good conscience can condone. So the actual procedure, was just something that seemed very brutal and violent to me, and I didn't want to be part of that. And then last, I learned about the principles of eugenics. and that eugenics had pervasively influenced the origins of international Planned Parenthood. It was connected with Margaret Sanger, Hans Harmsen, and German national racial hygiene. So I was originally going to put some quotes in here, but I couldn't find the source document, and that's really important to me. But I encourage you to look this up on your own and form your own conclusions. But to me, if we're talking about historical analysis, eugenics, and in particular, German eugenics that helped shape, some very harmful policies, it was very clear to me that it was pervasive in how the founders of Planned Parenthood looked at reproduction and looked at who is valuable and who's not valuable. And I believe that systematically affects the abortion movement that we see today. So where did that leave me? After all of that, after all of my research, what happened when the dust settled? Well, I'm still here. I'm fully pro-life, obviously. I'm still an agnostic, so I'm amenable to religion. I have some good memories of growing up religious. I respect the church. I'm not a practicing Catholic, though. I neither believe nor disbelieve in the existence of a God. And, I just became more committed and, wholeheartedly pro-life after going through this experience. So that's really where I landed after the whole thing. So today I have a wide variety of people in my circles. I have really nothing personal to gain from being pro-life because most of my circles are pro-choice. Even my husband, great example, is pro-choice. While most of my friends disagree with my pro-life views, I have had some success advocating for more abortion moderation and breaking this typical stereotypes about pro-lifers. So when people are saying, oh, you're only older white men Republicans, I'm like, hi, it's me. I'm not. So that's been part of my kind of my mission, post my deconstruction and finding my pro-life lens again. And it is possible. My husband is a primary example. When I met him, he was very much, oh, it's a woman's choice. He was very pro-abortion, and he thought at any stage for any reason, you know, he advocated for abortion. So, needless to say, when we started dating, I said, there's something you got to know about me. I'm pro-life 100%. I will never have an abortion. If you want to have a relationship with me, then, you need to be okay with this. And if you're not, that's okay. It's just, this is very important to me. And he said, no problem. I understand. And then we had several conversations, as our relationship grew. And I started talking about, embryonic development and what abortion procedures looked like. And I talked about a lot of the things that I had researched. And, he has changed his viewpoint so much. He still considers himself pro-choice, but he is now to the point where he'll say, I think abortion should be illegal after the first trimester, which coming from somebody who was previously saying any gestational age, any reason is a huge leap to me, and it's a leap in a positive direction. So I kind of apply that same philosophy with talking to my husband about my circles and about living in a very pro-abortion state like Colorado. Um, I know at least in my lifetime, I am never going to make this a conservative pro-life state. I really don't even want to make it conservative, but it's not going to become a pro-life state. But I will, and I do speak out about pro-choice blind spots, like reducing options for pregnant people who want to choose life, and making sure that, really well-meaning pro-choice people aren't staying in those blind spots where they're only giving certain choices. They're not giving life-affirming choices as well. And I think that's really important to point out, especially coming from somebody like myself who has experienced crisis and who does have an alternative viewpoint of the world, to kind of point out that, if you're pro-choice, you want to support the women who and the pregnant people who maybe don't want to get an abortion but feel as though there's no other option. So I talk a lot about those options with people who are pro-choice, and I actually find that pretty successful. They're normally pretty open to it. So I'm going to end with this. Um, I've had moments being an alt pro-lifer where I've felt kind of hopeless. It feels like I don't belong in a political party. I'm kind of in between camps. I'm not fully in one group or the other group. But without sounding Pollyanna-ish, I truly think we're the strong ones. My hope is that someday we'll have options and choices that don't involve taking the life of another human being, born or unborn. I also hope that we'll see people and future generations not as economic tools or a nation's genetic potential, but as individuals who deserve life and dignity regardless of age, identity, race, or ability. And I truly don't think there's a reasonable pro-choice person alive who wouldn't agree with these goals. So I'm just going to end with this: do no harm, and it's good to be alive.
Okay. Thank you so much, Kerry. And now we'll have time for everyone. Please, we'll go around the room. I'll just ask you to introduce yourself if you don't mind. And then if you have a question or comment for Kerry, now is your opportunity. And we will start with Catherine.
Hey, you guys, my name is Catherine. I go by Kat or Kate. I'm in Virginia. This is my first time joining. I've kind of interacted with some of you guys virtually through Secular Pro-Life, and that's how I got plugged in. It's my first time joining, and it's great to be here. And thanks, Kerry, for sharing your story.
Thank you, Catherine. And Susan. If you're talking, Susan, you're on mute. Give her a second. We'll come back to you, Susan. Herb.
Hello, I am Herb Garrity. I work with Secular Pro-Life. I am happy to be here. I was late, which I'm so upset about because I was rushing to get back to my house on time. So if there's time at the end, my question is, what did you talk about for the first 6 minutes? But you don't have to answer that now.
We talked about you, Herb.
Yeah, all about you.
It's true to a certain extent. I try to use a speaker, but we'd have to pay for you because you're like almost a star, So that was part of the conversation. That is true. And just about how we circle around with the different alt pro-life groups. I was trying to get every group to speak to us. Next up to bat, Michelle.
Hi everyone, I'm Michelle Buenrostro. I do communications for Secular Pro-Life. I live in California. I'm out here with my wife, and Kerry, thank you so much for sharing your story. Something that really resonated with me was having a pro-choice husband, because my partner was pro-choice for 6 years before finally converting. So I'm like hoping that for you. And it was very like incremental. It wasn't like all of a sudden fully pro-life, but it was like, okay, yeah, maybe I do have a problem with that and that, or I didn't know about that. It was a lot of, I didn't know about that. So I'm really hoping that for you, Kerry. I do have a question. You mentioned that your friends would send you like TikToks from pro-choice doctors. What were some of those doctors?
Oh, it's been a while. I think one of them was, I think it was may have been Jen Hamilton. Don't quote me on that. And there were a couple of others. I would have to look up her texts again. So, because at that point I was like I didn't think TikTok was a credible source. And of course now like I go online and I see Monica. So my perspective on that has changed. But at the time, I was thinking, oh, I'm not going to take a doctor's advice on TikTok. So,
Unfortunately, most people are very trusting once they see somebody wearing a white coat. We found that there are doctors, even like there's I forgot her name, but she's an eye doctor on TikTok and she talks about abortion a lot. So that's not even within her medical domain. And just because she has the scrubs on, people have a lot of faith in what she's saying. So it's unfortunate that there's a lot of misinformation through healthcare professionals online.
yeah, it's true.
Thanks for joining us, Michelle. Joseph?
Hi, I'm Joseph, and it's been a long time since I've been on here, and the reason why is because, I mean, honestly, I was just laid off last month, and so now I have time at 5 o'clock on a weekday to kind of be a part of this because I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area, so it's kind of great. Kerry, I really enjoyed what you had to say. I'm very Catholic. I'm a Catholic educator. I mean, look at, you see it all over the place here. Daily Mass, I go to daily Mass and all that stuff. But the biggest thing I've always been against is pro-life being a religious movement, kind of, or under the umbrella of religion. And the one part I've always been very secular about is pro-life, because I've just, from personal experience, when you start mixing in Jesus and life is holy and the sanctity of life, you're mixing two very volatile topics: religion, God, and being pro-life, abortion. And I've always thought that's like the wrong way, because I've just seen when people start with the religious aspect of it, it just creates another point of contention in the conversation. So I've always avoided that, and like my biggest, my pro-life activity is using like created equal material, because it's very secular, it's very neutral, and I've always tried to tell people, oh, let's go easy on the whole Jesus stuff, because a lot of people who are going in for abortions are probably not believers to begin with, and you're going to just add another layer of hostility. So and just one other thing, I asked Jason for permission to kind of give a shout out to a couple of groups. I belong to a conservative LGBTQ conservative group, and one guy said on there, he says, well, I'm a conservative, but I'm pro-choice, and he says, because I don't believe in God and all that kind of stuff. And he says, I don't know any atheists that are pro-life. And I was like, really? So I had to send him the secular pro-life group link. And I'm like, dude, there's, if you really look at it, I mean, there's pagans for life, Muslims for life. There's this, I mean, and we always march under the umbrella sometimes of, the cross, which I think kind of does a disservice to pro-life. So it's kind of, I find myself, because I'm very religious, Catholic educator, but that's the one part I'm like, this is a human rights issue, not a religious issue.
Sure. Well, it's something I remember on that note, Joseph, when I went through catechism, was that abortion is not a violation of, a church teaching. It's a violation of natural law. So the
True.
church actually talks about, this isn't something that just belongs to Christians. It's something that belongs to humans as a race. It's something that's been, as far as the first century, people have been, and further than that, people have been teaching, that abortion is murder and it's immoral. So yeah, I think that's a great point.
I just think the problem when you equate morality with it, everyone, I mean, in the whole idea of even pre-Christian morality is like just a way of life, right? I mean, that's kind of the Roman idea, pre-Christian idea. It's just a way of society, how society functions. It's like behave proper, good behavior. But these days, as soon as people equate morality with religion, and they feel that this is becoming a religious issue. And I think that just turns people off, because I mean, I know people who are not religious, who are pro-life. But if you add the layer of religion on it, they're like, oh, yeah, I don't want to go there, though. So I really enjoyed what you had to say, though. I think it's totally valid, completely valid.
Yeah. No, and I appreciate that, too. I still have a lot of respect for the church. So I'm really, and I think all Catholics should still be pro-life, too. It just perturbs me when I meet pro-choice Catholics, but that's a whole nother tangent. So,
I'm with you.
We're glad you're here.
I'm with you.
Thanks, Joseph. Susan, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm sorry. It's coming up in the elevator when you called on me, and I couldn't get everything together. But I'm also a practicing Catholic, but I have been concerned about the way the church treats LGBT plus individuals, and so I'm trying to work that out for myself and create a path that includes both. Um, I One thing I wanted to ask you about is for the friends of yours that are pro-choice, when they see like pro-choice men saying, anytime, any reason, it seems so self-serving to me because it's like, yes, and then you don't have to pay child support. And then you don't have to follow through on being a father. And I'm always surprised that that issue doesn't come up for pro-choice women. Do you have any comment on that?
I've seen a wide variety on that, but I will say, Susan, some of the most vocal opposition I've received as a alt pro-lifer has been from pro-choice men. And that's probably just who I'm talking to at the moment. I don't know if it's statistically a trend, but I have noticed that. And I do think it is a version of not supporting women, is not offering a pregnant person the support that they need to choose life. So fortunately with my husband is he genuinely felt like, oh, it is her choice, it's her body, I'm
Mhm.
just going to go along with whatever. So I have more leverage there. But I've also met pro-choice men who basically say, I won't raise a child if you have it and it has Down syndrome. I won't do this, I won't do that. And they will tell their partners that they'll abandon them. And yeah, it's just that's not even choice. And that's really what I try to highlight to people who are genuinely pro-choice and not pro-abortion, is that if you are pro-choice, you at least want women to have the option and not to feel forced towards an abortion.
And the people who know me and that have been in this group for a while know I have cerebral palsy and I'm in an electric wheelchair. And one of the reasons that I'm as pro-life as I am is I feel that people with disabilities are unfairly subjected to abortion. And so, anyway, I'm glad to have you here. Loved your speech. Thank you.
And welcome back, Susan. Thank you.
Mhm.
Melissa?
Hi, I'm Melissa. It's my first time here. Really good to be here, though. I'm kind of new to the pro-life scene-ish. I went to the March for Life in January and then got connected with Secular Pro-Life. Hi, her. And met a whole bunch of really cool people and got involved. So I've done several things since then. But yeah, I was raised fundamentalist Christian, like the same denomination that Pete Hegseth is in. Fundamentalist evangelical. I sometimes get panic attacks now from like the stuff I was taught growing up. Anyways, I don't. Sorry to trauma down here. My point is though, now that I've deconstructed and like still continue to deconstruct, I'm pro-life for very secular reasons, and I love the religious pro-lifers, but like I don't like religious pro-life arguments because it's like you know it takes me back to a bad place, if that makes sense. But yeah, so I'm pro-life for secular reasons. And I really appreciate alt groups that are pro-life for reasons other than religious reasons.
Thanks for joining us, Melissa.
Good to be here.
Judy? You're on mute, Judy.
I have to leave. They're Kerry, I don't think I'm going to talk about abortion because everybody said what they have to say. But I think, by the way, congratulations on your new baby.
Yeah.
I think it's very difficult because I know I almost did construction. I'm Jewish, by the way. I'm not Christian at all, and I am obviously pro-life. One of the things, of course, was abortion. But it's very, very difficult to deconstruct. I think I love my religion, and the other issue that almost got me out was Israel. I don't want to get into Israel, but everybody's been reading about the Gaza and the killing, and you have a lot of Jews out there that are just dogmatic when it comes to Israel, right or wrong. We don't care. So it becomes a situation where I love my religion, but I don't like the views of something what goes on, and it took a lot of courage. I think the conclusion I came to was not the same as yours. That's not religion speaking when it comes to killing of any kind, whether it's Gaza, whether it's babies. That's all I'm going to say.
Thank you, Jean. Thanks. And I will let everyone know, just if they don't. So Rainbow Pro-Life is non-sectarian. We are LGBT plus focus plus allies. So obviously we have folks that sometimes I get that question, do you have to be LGBT plus to be in the group? No. As long as you're respectful. We even have people that disagree with us that want to join every once in a while. That's fine. Just be respectful. Also, we are a little different. We are an alt pro-life group, and we're a little different than the other groups. But I have, like I said at the beginning, all these different groups. We're trying to interact and collaborate more and more as time goes on. And I think it's very important that we do that. And yet we need to kind of take a moment to just recognize we're a little different. So, and we're not second. We have a lot of folks that are very religious that are part of our group. They might be LGBT, but they're, like Joseph, example A, if I don't mind picking on you, and myself, very religious. So I just want to make sure you know that. And we love secular pro-life. We love Rehumanize. We love progressive anti-abortion uprising. We're not necessarily progressive. Rehumanize has some things and some issues that we just don't get into. And that's okay. So we're all collaborating together. And that's why we're here tonight. And you guys have really excellent questions and comments. I really appreciate that. Getting to know you for the first time or a little better. I already know you. Kerry, do you have any last minute words of wisdom for us?
Well, there's a lot of opportunity for a group like this. And I just know for myself, and I've mentioned it to SPL before, I'll mention it here again. The movement's not about me. Sometimes I can get on my soapbox a little bit and talk about it, but it really means a lot to see everybody showing up here with such diversity and different viewpoints, but we all agree that life is sacred. And I just think that's such a beautiful gift to have. And I don't want to let go of that anytime soon. It's just been awesome to meet people who are like-minded like that and yet different than me. So
I appreciate that, Kerry, and thanks for joining us tonight and being brave enough for us to interrogate you and to share a little bit about yourself and your history. And as good examples, and to continue this, for instance, Judy and Joseph, I'll pick you guys out in particular, how there's a lot of people that don't know we exist, that don't know secular pro-life exists, that don't know anything exists besides a particular version of pro-life that they heard from somebody. I guess I'll pick on Pete Hegseth or something. So let me know. Email our group, email Secular Pro-Life, get in touch with us. If there's a group that you can reach out to or a person to say, hey, not everyone is this cookie cutter pro-lifer that you think they are, please invite them, share. I really appreciate it. We appreciate that. We need that. A lot of people do not know we exist. Mm-hmm. And we can't even get to the preborn advocacy if they don't realize that pro-life is not just one thing. There's a lot of different people that are pro-life. with that said, I really appreciate all of you joining us. We meet monthly pretty much. We're working on our August speaker as we speak. And we will see you in just a couple of weeks. Have a great night.